The sound of a mop bucket rolling across marble echoed through the empty corporate lobby long after midnight, but no one noticed the man pushing it except the security cameras and the loneliness clinging to the walls. On the top floor of the same building, behind glass and steel and success, a woman sat alone in a wheelchair, staring at a city that admired her power but never truly saw her pain. That night, two broken lives were quietly moving toward a moment neither of them expected, a moment where kindness would speak louder than money, titles, or pride. Before the story unfolds any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of simple human goodness to change lives, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us what really matters. Daniel Carter had learned to walk softly through life, not because he was weak, but because he carried too much responsibility to afford noise. A single father in his late 30s, Daniel worked the night shift as a janitor in a towering Manhattan office building, cleaning the messes of people whose lives looked perfect from the outside. His days began before sunrise, helping his 8-year-old daughter Emily get ready for school, braiding her hair with clumsy fingers, and packing lunches that always included a handwritten note reminding her that she was loved. His nights ended with aching arms, sore knees, and the quiet worry of bills stacked neatly on a kitchen table he pretended not to see. Life had not always been this way. Daniel's wife, a gentle woman named Rachel, had died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition 3 years earlier, leaving him with grief that never truly left, and a child who needed him to be strong every single day. He took the janitor job not because it was his dream, but because it paid steadily and allowed him to be present for Emily. Pride became a luxury he could no longer afford, and dignity came from doing honest work with care. On the 46th floor of the same building worked, or rather lived, Margaret Whitmore, the CEO of Whitmore Financial Group. To the world, she was a legend, a self-made executive who had built a billion-dollar empire through intelligence, discipline, and an iron will. To the board, she was respected and feared. To the media, she was untouchable. But in private, Margaret was painfully alone. A car accident 5 years earlier had left her confined to a wheelchair, shattering not just her spine but her trust in people. Friends faded away, relationships dissolved, and sympathy became something she despised. She filled the emptiness with work, believing success could drown out the silence that followed her everywhere. Margaret often stayed late, long after the last executive had gone home, staring at spreadsheets that blurred into meaninglessness. The building felt different at night, stripped of applause and ego, leaving only echoes. It was during one of these nights that she first noticed Daniel, though she did not know his name. He moved carefully through the executive floor, wiping glass walls, straightening chairs, and never once acting like he didn't belong there. He didn't stare at her wheelchair, didn't rush past her either. He simply worked, as if her presence was as ordinary as the desks and lights. Weeks passed, and Margaret began to notice small things. On mornings when she arrived early, she found her office arranged just the way she preferred, even though she had never told anyone her preferences. The heavy conference room door, which was difficult for her to open alone, was often already positioned so she could enter easily. Once, when she spilled coffee reaching for her desk, she returned later to find the stain gone and a discreet note from facilities apologizing, though she had never reported it. These details irritated her at first, then confused her, and finally unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. Daniel never expected gratitude. Kindness to him was not a transaction but a habit. He had learned after Rachel's death that the world could be unbearably cruel, and the only way to survive was to add softness wherever possible. He noticed Margaret because he noticed everyone, especially those who seemed most alone. He saw how employees avoided her, how conversations stopped when she entered a room, how her eyes lingered on laughter she wasn't part of. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He made her days a little easier in quiet, invisible ways. The turning point came one stormy night when the power flickered across the building. Rain lashed against the windows and thunder rattled the steel frame. Margaret had stayed late again, pushing herself beyond exhaustion, when the elevator stalled. She found herself alone on her floor, emergency lights casting long shadows, her phone dead, and a rising panic she refused to acknowledge. The building, once a symbol of her control, suddenly felt like a cage. Daniel was still working when the outage hit. Instead of rushing to clock out, he checked each floor as protocol demanded. When he reached the executive level and saw Margaret sitting alone in the dim light, something tightened in his chest. Without hesitation, he ensured the emergency systems were stable, located a flashlight, and positioned himself nearby without hovering. He didn't treat her like a problem to solve or a burden to manage. He treated her like a person who might be scared but deserved dignity. In that quiet, powerless building, something shifted inside Margaret. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel vulnerable without resentment. Daniel didn't offer pity, didn't overstep, didn't disappear either. His presence was steady, respectful, human. When the power finally returned and the elevators hummed back to life, Margaret felt something unfamiliar settle over her, a sense of connection she hadn't realized she was starving for. From that night on, things began to change slowly, almost imperceptibly. Margaret started leaving her office door open. Daniel found himself assigned more frequently to the executive floors, not by coincidence. Margaret learned about Emily through small, accidental details, a crayon drawing once tucked into Daniel's pocket, a phone call reminding him about a school project. Daniel, in turn, learned that Margaret funded scholarships anonymously, that she ate dinner alone every night, that success had cost her nearly everything else. Their lives did not transform overnight. Challenges remained. Daniel still struggled financially, still fought exhaustion, still worried about Emily growing up without a mother. Margaret still battled chronic pain, isolation, and a world that saw her chair before her heart. But kindness had cracked something open in both of them. Margaret began questioning the culture she had built, the fear she ruled with. Daniel began believing, just a little, that his quiet goodness mattered. Over time, Margaret made changes within the company, investing in accessibility, employee support, and fair wages, not as a publicity move, but as a personal reckoning. Daniel was offered opportunities he never expected, support for Emily's education, and eventually a role that recognized his reliability and integrity. Neither of them spoke about that stormy night, but both carried it with them as a reminder of what one small act could do. As this story nears its end, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate compassion in unexpected places. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Before the final moments, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with the word kindness if you believe that even the smallest good deed can change a life. In the end, Daniel returned home. Each morning to his daughter, carrying hope alongside his fatigue, while Margaret returned to a world that felt less cold and less empty. Their lives did not become perfect, but they became real again. In a building designed for power, it was kindness that left the deepest mark, proving that sometimes the most life-changing acts are done quietly, by people the world rarely notices.